Straight from the manger, saved by the Savior. Love, that's a layup. Temptation, couldn't even face it. 40 days and nights and still proclaiming the kingdom. Back by the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Every time we get involved, it's a dog. By the fall, ain't no draw. It ain't even close, hold on. Faith, faith, faith. Ain't even close, hold on. Faith, 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 favor. Tiptoeing with this faith of mine. Big stepper, yeah, yeah. Big stepper, big stepper, yeah. Back by the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Every time we get involved, it's a dog. By the fall, ain't no draw. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. All praise to the Most High. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. No, no, no.
America has a long history of racism, and that racism has created deep divides in healthcare and housing and education and so much more. And what's so sad about it is that
a lot of this so-called racism that people talk about had to do with this idea of a multi-ethnic cosmopolitan society that's predicated upon these principles of the kind of commonality amongst men.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to...
And this is a fairly relatively new concept that a lot of people were not particularly keen on. They didn't know how well it could work.
People underestimate just how bloody the Civil War actually was. In the aftermath, there was understandably a lot of tensions. I mean, you're talking the loss of brothers and sons and fathers.
And Old Town USA has segregation laws in there.
I think it's easy to look back from a 21st century perspective and judge how that tension was handled. And truth be told, there was a lot of irrational reaction. One of the examples of an irrational reaction was the birth of the Ku Klux Klan, which started out as a fraternity to try to fight back against what they saw as the intrusive activities of Northern carpetbaggers. It's a little known fact that even some blacks joined the Ku Klux Klan. But for the most part, the separation of the ethnicities was actually the wisest thing to do, all things considered. some 30 years after the end of slavery, Booker T. Washington exercised leadership when he delivered a speech to a large crowd in Atlanta, Georgia. In this speech, he stressed the importance of temporary separation, giving each group the space it needs to focus on its own social uplift and progress. The idea being that after a certain amount of time, eventually, those tensions will soften and those barriers will begin to break down and people will learn to live with one another.
Cast down your bucket where you are. The second time, the signal water. Let us water. Let us from distress letter. In an answer, cast down your bucket where you are.
Every race and nationality has a community. It's natural for people of the same race and nationality to move in an area and the others come in, and before you know it, you have a community. You go one end of this country to the other. You'll find a German community. You'll find a Polish community. You'll find a Jewish community. You'll find a French community. As many nationalities as you have, you'll find communities across the width and breadth of this nation. This isn't accidental. This exists all over the world. Under separate but equal, the southern states where we have a biracial society and have had, much of it came about as a result of the desire of the Negroes themselves to separate. Separate schools. Many parts of the South were voted for and approved by the Negro leaders themselves. The South built many new schools, many of them far superior to those that were attended by white children, and the facilities were gradually being equalized.
Since slavery was abolished, Negro illiteracy has rapidly decreased, and today more than 80% of the colored population has had some schooling.
Those schools weren't torn up. Those teachers weren't raggedy. There are towns like that all the way through the South where black people run these towns, where they have their own schools, where they have their own sheriffs and their own police departments, their own municipalities.
This biracial setup has gone on in the South for a number of years. Interracial commissions were set up in the South, and these commissions were composed of responsible white and Negro leaders in the South. And they were doing a pretty good job. When there was friction between the two groups, they sought to find a solution. And as a result of it, much of the progress that has been made in establishing good relations in the South can be laid at the door of the Interracial Commission.
The strategy stressed by Booker T. Washington was actually working, especially at the private and local levels. So-called Jim Crow ordinances were being withdrawn in places like Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, North Carolina, Florida, and all throughout the South. This went on from the 1890s all the way up to 1954, before the Brown v. Board of Education decision.
It seems we stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where or when. The clothes you're wearing are the clothes you wore. The smile you are smiling, you were smiling then, but I can't remember where or when. Some things that happened for the first time.
Think about what it does to a young black man, as far as the psyche is concerned, to hear your so-called black leaders making much of integration. When your dentist is black, your doctor is black, right, the teacher at the school is black, everybody you know who's successful in your context is black.
But then you turn on television and you see Martin Luther King talking about we need to integrate and we need to do this, we need to do that. What that does to you psychologically is make you think, is a white man's ice colder?
We went to black schools.
Schools were not integrated at that time. Do the best that you can with your life. You are unique. You have a contribution to make. You have something to offer. You have a talent. You have skills. Schools had a heavy reinforcement into our characters.
Even to this day, I don't think I've ever had such a positive educational experience than I did in my first 6 years. We didn't realize it was segregated. All we knew is that our neighborhood was all black. We had a black superintendent, a black principal, all the teachers were black.
We had black stores in the black community, and we just looked up to them because they had so much to offer.
People who owned the store down the street were black, the tailor, the restaurant owners, the undertaker, everybody in the neighborhood worked, and we weren't even that conscious of color.
Skilled trades were very heavy: masonry, carpentry, electronics, auto mechanics, and many, many others. So we were encouraged. This instilled within us a tremendously great deal of dignity and somebodyness.
I have a dream.
In the early days, civil rights was not an issue.
We did not envision a day of, hey, it's necessary to pass some legislation from Congress. We did not envision the day that, hey, it'd be a day of affirmative action. You know, go on and on and on to various things.
Freedom is not enough. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberating, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others.
Integration was never an issue for me or for many others.
This dream, using the metaphor from Dr. King, there was a lot of naivete in it. And I know I didn't understand a lot of the whole economic issues.
I think confusion on that point has continued to erode the collective self-confidence of the black community today.
I feel that I cannot reach our children.
Most of them have the attitude that blacks have never done anything. And since no one else has ever done anything, probably I won't do anything. And that is not the case.
Since we have integrated, we have become too comfortable. We think we don't have to do, that we're going to make it anyhow. I thought integration meant that we were going to have better facilities, we were going to have equal rights. I did not think that values would be destroyed and these kinds of things. I just thought it meant equal at that time.
For so long, we have waited for another phenomenal prophet to have another visionary dream. But this
pursuit of justice and equity
is our dreams.
For all citizens.
Today is our day.
That I take this
and this is the day when we must overcome because we have a new mindset.
All the Congressional Black Caucus is a scheme. These are people who are in Congress who claim to be champions and advocates for poor people, for black people, for children.
They struck a blow against the children, $60 billion in cuts. Oh, they took the safety net from under the children.
If you take what they're saying at face value, then you might be compelled to think like, oh, these people really do care for the people that they're advocating for.
Families who find themselves in a little difficulty will not have any support from welfare because you're taking away the safety net from them.
Instead of saving children, we put their needy parents into competition with one another, the working poor and the welfare poor.
But then you think to yourself, well, wait, where are these children's fathers? Where are these children's mothers? How come they are not providing the hope and the protection and the nutrition that these politicians say these children need? And then you realize, oh, these politicians are birthed out of that same ilk of so-called community organizers and activists of people who are in many ways themselves responsible, who have historically been successful in debilitating Black America, who have used their rhetoric and their tactics to take away that entrepreneurial spirit that used to exist in Black America. to the point where it's sad to say, but a lot of our men and women really have nothing going for them.
A chaotic scene as hundreds make a run for the door and a chance at Dallas County housing vouchers.
The government has really become their only lifeline.
Me and my kids, they haven't ate since this morning. And I was supposed to get my food stamps yesterday and I didn't get nothing.
We are here trying to protect the rights of average, ordinary Americans.
Whenever you see the Congressional Black Caucus up there advocating for these programs, what they are doing is they are purposefully taking the place of the family, of mother and of father, and are assuming that role for themselves because they want power and they want for their overlords to have power because it keeps their bellies fed.
This is an unfriendly Congress when it comes to children. We take away $14 billion from Medicaid so that women and children cannot get good health care that are on welfare.
Republicans are hurting those who don't deserve it. We have Medicare recipients and children who won't receive benefits because Republicans simply don't care.
The Republican plan puts 1.5 million children into poverty. It takes from school lunches and child care.
The only entitlements being taken away by the Republican majority are means-tested entitlements for the poorest people in America.
The most vulnerable, the poorest people in this country, these people would leave exposed without their AFDC benefits.
Republicans want to experiment with programs which for decades have fed millions of children in schools and daycare centers.
We have my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans.
Tonight, the Trump administration calls it common sense. Critics call it an all-out assault on diversity. The president has ordered all federal employees working in diversity, equity, and inclusion roles to be placed on paid leave starting today. This is the beginning of President Trump's promise to roll back DEI initiatives.
Listen, bro, to all my black people here in the U.S., it's time to lock in and act like we didn't been here before. Stop acting surprised, hoodwinked, bamboozled at anything that has transpired in the past 24 to 48 hours or anything that will transpire over the next 5 years. Nothing these racist do should surprise you at this point. We've been dealing with them for over 500 years. If you thought they were bluffing, pull your head out of your ass, bro, and get back to reality.
If you don't remember Jim Crow, you'll never understand DEI. If you don't know what the White Citizens Council was, you'll never understand why I'm afraid of the Proud Boys. My brother and my sister, if the names Carol Robertson and Cynthia Wesley and Denise McNair and Addie Mae Collins doesn't mean anything to you, you'll never understand why I wanted to burn this thing down when Breonna Taylor was killed. You don't know where we've been. If you don't remember Emmett Till, you'll call Black Lives Matter thugs. And insurrectionists you'll call patriots. If the name Medgar Evers doesn't mean anything to you, you won't understand why I fight these voter suppression laws. If you don't know who James Chaney and Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner were, you'll never understand why I was so angry when he called white supremacists good people.
They ban our history because black history, by definition, is political.
That's right.
Because black people, by definition, are political, right? Our history is political because every story of American greatness, every story of American exceptionalism you want to tell, here we are off to the corner. Say, how do you explain us?
That's right.
If all this is true, why are we here? If all this is true, how do you explain how you suppressed our rights for 350 years? How you bought and sold our ancestors? How you claim to be democratizing Europe, but denying violently democracy for black people here. So we're the most inconvenient people to the story of American exceptionalism. Right. So they want to ban our history because we give lie, right? We reveal the lie of this country.
Listen, bro, to all my black people here in the U.S., it's time to lock in and act like we didn't been here before. Stop acting surprised, hoodwinked, bamboozled at anything that has transpired in the past 24 to 48 hours or anything that will transpire over the next 5 years. Nothing these racist do should surprise you at this point. We've been dealing with them for over 500 years. If you thought they were bluffing, pull your head out of your ass, bro, and get back to reality.
For 90 days, they're going to do a study of what companies have pulled out of DEI and what companies have a small margin of profit. And we in 90 days are going to announce the 2 companies that we're going after. And we're going to ask everybody in this country, black, white, brown, gay, straight, woman, trans, don't buy where you are not respected.
Well, there you have it. Okay. You see it. Don't ever underestimate it. Don't ever underestimate us. Honey, we come through when needed. We unified. We got it. And we gonna keep having it. Okay? Y'all be blessed.
Y'all want to know why we said that, oh, it's not just politics, this is the reason why we can't be friends with y'all? Please explain to me how it's making America great again to roll back an executive order that literally states you cannot discriminate against people on their race, gender, sexual identity, etc., etc. Please tell me how that makes America great again. Now, you can make an objective, non-moral argument for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sure. Am I going to entertain you? Probably not. But you can make that argument. But please explain to me. And y'all want me to be friends with y'all? Y'all want us to forgive y'all? Because you got buyer's remorse? Because you realize, oh, he just got, bro! Y'all don't understand. But you're finding out now. You're finding out now. Y'all losing jobs. Your racist grandma prescription done gone up. And I'm not going to wish death on nobody. But I will say this. God's timing is always right. Goofy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. I am one of your hosts, Quisha King. Y'all, it has been one heck of a last, I don't know, like hour and a half because the plumbing in my house just started acting up. Where's Chad Jackson when you need him, right? The plumbing, like where is he at when you need him? Listen, so bear with me because I don't know. I'm going to be dipping in and out, and I'll probably, we're waiting for the plumber now. They're on the way. But a few notes about that montage. As always, Chad puts together great montages. You got people on $1,000 cell phones complaining about how they can't get ahead in America. I don't know. I just always find that so fascinating. You're literally using all the latest technology and complaining that you don't have and you can't do. Blows my mind. Nicole Hannah-Jones, she said, Blackness is political. That's why Blanche and many of us, we have rejected Blackness. We don't claim that because it is political. I'm glad she said it. So now you can separate who you are and Blackness because it was just a tool. It is just a tool to control you. Like Blanche says, to be Black is to be controlled. And Nicole Hannah-Jones just said it because being Black, the whole thing is a political, it's a political tool. Let's see. I forget who said, I think it was that preacher guy, preacher. He said, Blacks were, we've never been able to like come up and do all these things, and we haven't, you don't know who this person is because you don't know what we've been through. And it's actually the opposite. Until before Martin Luther King and all of that stuff, Black Americans were doing really, really well. We were actually a phenomenon considering what the slaves had gone through and all the wealth that they were creating. There's so many people who were becoming millionaires in all of these neighborhoods, and they were wealthy, they were business owners. My great grandparents, not only did my great grandfather own, he had over almost 400 acres of land that my family still lives on today. But he had his own store. And then my great grandmother, his wife, her family had their own store. So entrepreneurship, all of that, Black people were doing that. And then the last guy who just had a whole entire feminine meltdown, he says, we need these laws, we need the DEI stuff. It's like, sir, we have a whole constitution of the Civil Rights Act. So we already have, since you need to not be discriminated against, we already got that. Anyway, to discuss this and so much more, I'm going to just go ahead and bring up the whole panel. Let me just let you know, Chad is not here tonight. He had to go a last minute business trip. So in his place, we have Mr. Jericho Green, who is joining us. So show him some love. Go over to his channel. Make sure you subscribe. We have Mr. Free Blanche Robinson, and Teach 'em Chuck. So welcome. What's up, y'all?
What's up, y'all? What's up?
Good to see you. How are you, Mr. Jericho?
I'm good. I'm doing great. I appreciate the invite. I mean, in Chad's place, man, those are some shoes to fill, but hey, I'll do my best. But the intro was great. The montage, I had to stop writing notes. I'm about 3/4 of the way down the page. I had to stop because
it happens.
There's just so much. And I know we're going to get into it, so I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but thank you for having me. Good to see you guys.
Glad for you to be here. Mr. Teach 'em Chuck Littleton, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And shout out to everybody watching the show. I meant to say this last week, and it totally slipped my mind. I apologize. But thank you to everybody who watches the show, who sent me private messages, direct messages over Instagram. In response to my stories over the past couple of weeks, my dad died on the 15th of January. So a lot of people sent their condolences, and I just want to say thank you for that. It helps. It helps you get through. It really does. People that you've never met. Sometimes the only thing you can say is, hey, I'm sorry, and you have my condolences, and you'll be surprised how it it helps. It really does. It helps you get through the day. So thank you, everybody watching the show, watches, Chad O'Jackson's channel, follows my content or whatever. Yeah. So that's I just wanted to get that off my chest because I didn't say it last week. That's my fault. So thank you, everybody, for that. But no, I'm doing all right. I'm doing smooth. I'm doing smooth. Yeah. So just ready to get into the show. Yeah, I saw the the Lyndon B. Johnson speech where he's talking about the analogy of starting a race. He actually made that speech. He was giving me a commencement speech. I think the year may have been 65, but I'm not entirely sure. But he was giving a commencement speech at Howard University in front of a predominantly Black audience, trying to, of course, sell all of these Great Society initiatives and whatnot. And like Chad, we talk a lot about the split, the dichotomy and perspectives between J.H. Jackson and Dr. Martin Luther King. Quisha talked about her family owning a farm. An interesting little tidbit about Dr. J.H. Jackson. His family actually owned their own farm in the Delta down in Mississippi. So like Quisha mentioned, there were plenty of Black folks who owned farms, who had land and property and so on and so forth. And so, so there was a lot of myths being peddled in that montage. And of course, Nicole Hannah Jones She has a quote where she says that there's a difference between being black and being, or what she's, there's a difference between being, how does she say it, being racially black and being politically black. And so there's a difference there. That's a quote of Nicole Hannah Jones. And so we can get into this as we move forward. But that's my brief little hello.
Blanche, I guess you gotta, figure out your blackness. Are you politically black? Are you racially black? Or you gotta figure that out now? Because Hannah Jones says, there's a difference.
Yeah, well, being politically black makes you a bliggity, and then just being black, it makes you a niglet. So it's two different. But she was talking about the bliggities versus the nigglets.
Or nignogs. I like that term.
Or nignogs.
Yeah.
Hey, niglet is one of the funniest words ever.
Those are the little ones. The nigglets are like the little kids.
That's from that movie Tales from the Hood. When I heard that changed my life. And I was like, what? Yeah, that was crazy.
You never seen that. You never seen Tales from the Hood, have you, Quisha?
Why you say that? What is that supposed to mean? No,
because when we brought it up before, you said you hadn't seen it, man.
Underrated classic.
Here we go. That girl's name? I hear it.
What's the girl's name who said the politically black Nicole
Hannah Jones. Nicole Hannah Jones.
She's the writer of the 1619 Project.
Oh, okay. Well, when I saw her before she even started talking, I was like, and I find myself, whatever comment section I wander into when it's something like this, it's always the mixed ones. It's always the mixed ones that, are just uber, super over the top, just whatever that is, whatever affliction that is. And I have mixed kids, and I hope that someday they don't go to college or something like that and then just have their mind poisoned. I hope that what I've instilled in them can withstand the barrage that they will definitely come into contact with if they go that route. I don't know. Does that happen? Were her parents just, the total opposite of that and something made her that way? Or was she steeped in that when she was coming up? But it's always the mixed ones.
Where is she from?
She's from like Wisconsin or something.
Oh,
go ahead, Jericho. My fault.
No, I mean, that clip that you brought up of LBJ, I didn't know where that was. So you're telling me that Lyndon Baines Johnson, Mr. I'm going to have these ends voting Democrats for the next 200 years. Civil rights, all that nonsense, the genesis. Part of the genesis of what got us to where we are now and people who we just saw clips of. But you're telling me that man gave that speech at an HBCU. That's like having a graduating class at Chicken University and you have a fox come and give the commencement speech.
Yeah. And Nicole Hannah Jones.
That's all that matters. All you have to do is be a Democrat. It's not really even for them. It's not even really about race. They don't care about race because they were shown up ready to hire Joe Biden to preside over them, the man who said all kinds of stuff about black people. So it's not about race. It's just about being a Democrat.
And Nicole Hannah Jones. And you said Quisha that she's from Wisconsin. It's interesting because I believe I'm not entirely sure on this. I know folks like Kimberly Crenshaw was present, I believe, in 1989 at the first conference that actually established the doctrine or the scholastic methodology we know today as critical race theory. This was in Madison, Wisconsin in 1989. Actually, one of the attendees who actually wrote the book Critical Race Theory and Introduction, Richard Delgado, describes the event, and he actually describes the 15 professors that gathered in Madison, Wisconsin that year as he describes them as Marxists. He said, we were 15 or so Marxists that came together to try and hash out what we agreed on and what we have in common and so on and so forth. I think they actually met at a convent or some type of church or religious building, ironically. And that's when, so the story goes, the theory of critical race theory was born in 1989. But of course, the critical race theory, it may have been given that name at that time, but the philosophy of critical race theory, of course, is far more, I don't necessarily want to say ancient, so to speak, but it goes back even further than the 1980s. The theory of critical race theory began in the 19th century, in fact. But yeah, very interesting. She may have been
Iowa. It's Iowa.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Same thing.
But
Same thing.
yeah,
Same
basically.
thing.
Yeah, that was shocking for me when I learned that she was from there. But gosh, look at my internet still messed up. But Blanche, did you give us your opening? Did you have?
Oh no. I mean, the montage was excellent. I just want to say that when I was coming up, I didn't know any elderly Blacks that didn't have any, they own their own homes and have all this stuff. Like, I didn't know any. It was crazy that they paint this picture that I never knew about growing up. You never thought that these things even existed because of the life you grew up under, seeing all these Black neighborhoods, people owning their homes, yards kept up. I didn't really see a shift until I would say probably in the 80s, like the crack started taking over, and then the gangs, and the next thing you know, it was just like a downward spiral. But when I was younger, though, it was normal to see, what I saw in the montage, just having everybody in the neighborhood being Black, the person that, mechanic shops, stores, dry cleaners, everything. It was normal. It wasn't even thinking that something was out of place. Now they make it seem like it never existed. Like Black folks was, stopped picking cotton in 1968. It's just crazy. Yeah, but montage was good though.
Yeah, they want to make you think that we went from the cotton fields to TikTok, and there was no in between. My dad, he owned a Union 76 gas station, and he sold it before I was born. So I remember finding these buckets. Well, remember the Union 76 styrofoam balls you put on top of your antenna? I remember finding buckets full of those and playing with them as a kid. And he had most of his friends were old Army buddies, and most of them were Black. They had the barber, Mr. Sanders, cut our hair, Mr. West. They were both mechanics and stuff. And the Millers, he owned apartments in a town that's predominantly Mexican. And I remember in the summer, I go help him when somebody moved out. We changed the carpet, paint, put in new appliances and stuff. And he paid me. And there's nothing like, as a young man, after working all day, going up to whoever you're working for, having them take their wallet out and start peeling off that money and paying you. I wish you could bottle that feeling. But that was normal to me as well. My dad was a successful businessman. Like I said, he sold it before I was born. My mom worked at the DMV, and she was a nurse part-time. So they were professional. They were business owners. His friends were business owners. And you just don't see it. You just, until somebody kind of snaps you out of it, and you're like, but wait a minute, that wasn't a problem before. Because a lot of this is a problem that didn't exist, and they created it. Like we're talking about, Black people were successful. We did things that everybody does, but now, no, that never happened. And we just have to be mad about something. And we're always tethered to the past. Everything that these folks complain about is old. It's hundreds of years old. It's at least 60 years old. Like there's no new stuff. And slavery, that's the go-to. If you got them against the ropes, they pull out the slavery, and that's it. I don't know, Quisha, you don't seem to be a movie buff on the classics based on what we were talking about before, but
Depends on the type of classic, but
there's a movie called Bloodsport. And in the fight,
Jericho, she ain't seen that. Stop, man.
I was trying to be nice. But the bad guy, or Jean-Claude Van Damme, he has the bad guy up against the ropes. He's beating him. And then he reaches in his waist and he has this powder and he throws it in his eyes and he starts cheating. So when you have them against the ropes, whether it be in a conversation or something, that's that slavery. That's supposed to end it all. But everybody had slaves or was one at some point, or maybe it changed. Maybe they won the next war. Now they're in charge. They lose the next one. But everybody did that. And why? Yes, it's bad. But when you do that, when you try to act like we have a monopoly on it, we're the only people who were ever enslaved, well, you're kind of taking us out of the kind of fair fight that everybody else is involved in life. You're bending the rules for us. You're calling a timeout and you're moving the ball down where it shouldn't be. What are you doing? That everybody else was slaves and they're okay. So why were we slaves? But we just can't shake it. We can't. It's 2025 and it's still a go-to.
Because it benefits you. You're incentivized to keep using it. You know, if Chad last Sunday said something so poignant. He said MLK's Martin Luther King, his whole thing is like the go-to, it's your go-to card to use anytime you want to do anything in Congress, like anytime you want the government to expand, the Civil Rights Act, Martin Luther King, slavery, it's a massive guilt trip that people use to put on white America. And they're still whites are still falling for it, and blacks are still using it. And so until one of them stop, which I think white people are kind of getting a little, they've kind of had it. Not enough of them have had it, but it's kind of starting to, like, I hope they're starting to see that they're getting played. You're being played, okay? Like, black people are not these, just incapable of thinking and doing things. Well, Blanche might say now we're definitely them black folks still incapable of thinking and doing stuff. Yep. But it is so pathetic, because really what you're saying is that it's like, oh, you're black, you poor thing. Mm-hmm. You poor thing, you. Look at you. You were born, with this crippling skin color that, somehow is so debilitating that you can't possibly, be anything better.
And to Blanche's point, just growing up and seeing a lot of successful blacks, black businesses, black neighborhoods, you didn't really think about it much. When you listen to Manning Johnson's farewell address, as it's called, being on the inside as a former communist, and much of it is like, okay, well, you take this person's word for it because they lived that life, and here they are trying to warn people of how communists actually operate. And it's, a lot of people are so just cynical and naive. It's hard for those who were inside of the party and who were party functionaries, especially if you were a part of the apparatus or the underground party, as it's called. I really take a lot away from the memoir of Whittaker Chambers when he talks about having to give public testimony before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and how difficult it was to communicate exactly how communists think and how communists operate. And a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is somewhat I don't necessarily want to say coincidental, again, because it's difficult for them to prove a lot of these things unless you actually see it happening and you go, so this is what this person was talking about. For example, when Manning Johnson talks about how a lot of blacks were, fed into the communist hype and communist propaganda, because of course the Soviet Union and the Communist Party was the side that, that if you were black, this is the side you needed to be on, because these were the folks who were fighting for justice and beating back imperialism and colonialism and all of these things. But Manning Johnson talks about how there was even a racial hierarchy within the Communist Party, and communists themselves were perhaps more racist than non-communist white folks. He talked about being black, being a member of the Communist Party, and how the white communist handlers of black communists would use a tactic that he referred to, this is Manning Johnson, as sexual politics. And what he means by that is he says that black communists were kept in line through essentially sexual exploitation. So they would have white white female communist or prostitutes or sex workers, essentially, or, you know, whether they were, you know, members of the Communist Party, took the pledge, took the oath or not, they would essentially control their black communist comrades with sex, you know, through, you know, blackmail, exploitation, etc. And then that made me think about, you know, a lot of the activities that King and his cadre were involved in. Sounds eerily similar to a lot of things Manning Johnson described in his farewell address. Also, Manning Johnson in that same farewell address talked about how, you know, he talked about groups like the NAACP and how quarrelsome they were and how they would stir up trouble, because you did have separate, these, you know, you had successful, you know, black businesses and banks and law firms and dental offices and so on and so forth. But it was the integrationist idea, right, spearheaded by groups such as the NAACP, where it's pretty much saying that, you know, they were trying to force integration. And their moral premise was, if we as black people simply have our own, then we are letting white folks off the hook for their immorality. So in order to create a more, I guess, a more perfect society, we have to change or rearrange their disposition. So instead of going about it Booker T. Washington's way and saying that, you know, essentially through market forces, we will learn how to better interact with one another once we, you know, discover, well, hey, this person brings such and such to the table, and this person can do this, and this person can do that. And, you know, based upon, of course, the principle of common grace and equal protection under the law, in spite of race, we can all essentially slowly but surely begin to figure out how to live more harmoniously among each other. That wasn't, I guess, fast enough for groups such as the NAACP. So Manning Johnson talked about how the Communist Party would infiltrate such groups and they would force integration. And after having done that, they would make what Manning Johnson describes as, what's the term he describes it as, irrational demands. We will make impractical demands to essentially provoke frustration from whites, to get them angry and to get them upset. And then he says and how they would do this was just kind of force integration and then make impractical demands. He said that you would have, like the example that Chad showcases in the documentary, that you would have white communists would buy property in predominantly white areas and lend the homes out to their black communist friends. And then they would go about the neighborhood and say, hey, you know, the old adage of, you know, there goes the neighborhood because there's a black family there. And then all of a sudden it would stir up all of this trouble, because communists knew that, you know, the whites in the neighborhood probably wouldn't take too kindly to blacks being thrusted into their neighborhoods. And this is something, again, that communists would do deliberately. But he says that there were black activists, your intellectual types, groups like the NAACP, they were actually blocking and sabotaging the creation and the maintaining and sustaining of black businesses, so as not to give whites an excuse not to, I guess, treat blacks equally or to allow them into their spaces. So according to Manning Johnson, you had blacks even back then, we're talking 1930s, 1940s, were preventing and stopping black people from creating their own businesses. This is what Manning Johnson says. And again, we see examples like that. So it seems to be a lot of truth to what he's saying.
Isn't that similar to what Saul Alinsky was doing?
Mm-hmm.
And his what he told his members or his people in his organization to do as well?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like pretend something is happening when it's really not.
Yeah, pretend something is happening when it's really not, or pretend, you know, Saul Alinsky would say, well, pretend to say support this certain politician or this certain person, and, you know, to show up like back. I always remember that example, and I remember Chad bringing it up because he hadn't heard about it until I mentioned it, and he said he went and looked it up and found out that it was actually true, that during during the Nixon administration, I can't remember his role at the time. He may have been ambassador to the UN. I can't recall. But George Herbert Walker Bush, Father Bush, was scheduled to give a speech at Tulane University. And, you know, the people, you know, protesters or whatever, you know, they showed up, and because it was war, Nixon, Republicans, and so Saul Alinsky told them instead, no, prior to his arrival, they were making a huge fuss, and somehow they reached out to Saul Alinsky to ask him for advice on what to do in order to prevent George Herbert Walker Bush from giving this speech at Tulane, I believe it was. And Saul Alinsky said, let him come. Let him come. He said, and what you do is you show up in support of Mr. Bush, but you do so wearing Klan regalia and Nazi insignia. Pretend to support him, but you sully his image and sully his reputation by pretending to be racist and white supremacists. And so these are the kind of underhanded tactics that Saul Alinsky, and of course the old story goes that Saul Alinsky learned how to do this by watching how the Chicago outfit used to operate, because he allegedly was closely connected to members of the Chicago mob. And so this is where he picked up these tactics from the Chicago mob.
Yeah. How he bust up unions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Barack Obama is a perfect example of things happening naturally. I mean, 60, 70 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, America wasn't going to have a president with his complexion. But obviously, fast forward to 2008, that totally changed. And if given time, things will naturally progress and organically change. But like you were saying, forcing it, anything that you force somebody to do, they're not going to want it. They're not going to mean it. If you've ever had to make your child apologize to their sibling or something, they don't mean it, but they're going to do it, but they don't want to. And there's going to be problems. And even though Black folks had their world and white folks had theirs, I think naturally over time they would have blended, and in a way that would have allowed Black folks to keep all the things that they own, the homes, the businesses, the property, the infrastructure, and white folks could keep theirs if they wanted to, but white people would come spend their money with us. We would go spend our money with white folks, but it happened in such a way that white folks kept all their businesses and we just went over there, and then all the Black businesses dried up and went away because for some reason we felt like our dollars should be spent over there because their products are better. So why harmony is so detrimental and dangerous to the powers that be, I don't understand, because I would think a prosperous, happy population is what they would want. People are going to put more money into the economy. They're going to want to work at these good jobs that people have. So I don't know. I think evil's in there. It has to be somewhere, because what other reason would you want to mess something up so great? I mean, everybody would, life would be perfect, but it would certainly be a lot better. There would be a lot more Black folks to get the representation that we often hear the pro-Blacks, that Nicole girl, cry about. I want to see more of us here and more of us there in movies and politics and everything. Well, it takes more of us if you want to see more of us. But, with abortions and violence, sometimes that just doesn't work out. But is here, and, I don't mean to get sexist, but is it a coincidence that a community, the Black community that is predominantly controlled by women, is it a coincidence that we are often led by our emotions, and emotions happen to be their go-to, their favorite weapon, their favorite arrow out of their quill is emotional. It doesn't have to be true. Look at Trump. Trump said this. We didn't say it, man, but we said he said it. Trump, he said there were good people on both sides. What? He likes the Klan? Yeah. Let's tear it up. He didn't say it. There's video evidence. There's video and audio evidence to the contrary, but no, my emotions, they tell me that this is how I'm supposed to feel, so that's what I'm going to do. So is that a coincidence, or is that part of the design?
I don't think that's sexist at all. I think it's a fair observation. I think we can see from the Bible that God, set things up in a certain way for men to lead. And when that order got all crazy with Black Americans, or fell out of order, you see everything go downhill. It all happened at the same time. Like all of these things, the feminist revolution, the sexual revolution, the civil rights revolution, all of these major social ills happened all at the same time. And I don't think many Americans paid attention to the other stuff, the feminists and the sexual revolution, as much as the focus was on like the civil rights revolution. And maybe if more attention was paid to those other things, it wouldn't be as bad, and people could have, kept things in line better. I don't know. But I do want to say, I remember, I've said this before, my mother used to say that she did not think that we should have ever integrated. I remember hearing that when I was young. I remember just my family, not just my immediate family, but the Black folks around us owning property. It wasn't even like, oh wow, that's so odd. My great grandfather used to sell his produce and meat and stuff like that to the town, like to like the town. And I'm just like, how do you go from that? Like he's doing business with white folks. How do you go from that to, all of them are racist? It's so weird. And it's pathetic. Like, it's not a flex. You look crazy. You look like someone not to be respected when you go around, claiming that you can't do something in the United States of America. Like, people on the outside of America look at Black Americans crazy who say that. It is like you can't understand it. Like, it doesn't make sense to anybody but the Black people who believe it.
Go ahead, Blanchard. It's on you.
Jericho had asked, why don't they want us to be in harmony, but they wouldn't be able to control the people. If everybody was together, then they'd have a common interest. It's harder to manipulate to get your agenda across. So us being, what people say, unified, but us really having just common interests wouldn't work for those that had nefarious intentions. If you think about it, slavery, race is the easiest divider, because you look at somebody, you can tell that they're not this and they are this or they aren't that, and you have a history that's attached to it. If you notice, all these people talking about race, 99% of what they say is from 100 years ago. They don't have much of the current situation of things that are going on. It's always a reference to the past, because that's what they lean on, is the fact that we had slavery, Jim Crow, and then everything, and segregation, everything bounces off of that. Even with the Target, I'm like, Black folks want to boycott Target for dropping DEI, but Target also has Black entrepreneurs in their stores. You want them to sabotage? It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And so now they're going to go down a whole list of places to boycott, and then where y'all going to shop? You're not going to shop with the Black. You're not going to shop with the Black business owners unless they're in a major chain store. Black folks don't want to admit this, but Black people are very brand heavy, meaning if they don't have a well-known brand attached to it, Black folks not going to support it. And so them boycotting Target is just insanity, because it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, yeah, they want to be able to control us, and control works best with division.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something too, just real quick, because I remember, and I think even Chad has used this clip often, of Dr. Claude Anderson's appearance on the Breakfast Club, and he's educating Charlemagne on the Black businesses, the Black bus companies that I think he said that his family in, I think it was North Carolina was the state he grew up in, and he talked about how, his family owned an entire fleet of buses, talking about all types of, Black businesses. And, Charlemagne is like, wow, I feel like such an idiot. I didn't think about that. I never knew that. I never considered that. You all did all of this just simply so you can ride at the front of the bus, which, again, in the bus boycott didn't do anything but, make people angry. Of course, the Supreme Court decision that actually integrated or desegregated public transportation was, of course, what was it, 1956 Supreme Court decision of Browder versus Gale. So I don't know how much the boycott had an effect, or maybe that, the judges, being human as they are, perhaps they were kind of moved not by their fidelity to the word of the words in the Constitution, but perhaps they were simply being kind of caught up in the moment, caught up in the times. But nevertheless, Charlemagne, again, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And if you read, and a lot of people think, well, see, here's a guy in Claude Anderson. See, he's educating you all. He's telling you all, like, how to do it. But if you know Dr. Claude Anderson, and you actually listened to him throughout the years, as I have, if you've read some of his work, read some of his literature, like I have, he may have been right in that moment to a certain extent, but he's a quack. He's an historical quack, and he's an economic quack. And a lot of people on the left, this whole issue of integration was a bad thing, right? They sort of co-opt that perspective to tell a kind of, or to spin a web or a yarn that fits their particular worldview, which suggests that, of course, if Black folks remain amongst themselves, then we would somehow magically, through I don't know, some sort of osmosis or whatever sort of process, that we would just all of a sudden have this collective uplift if we just simply chose to stay amongst ourselves, because somehow spending our money outside of our community or spending money here and there, it somehow hurts us all. And so you can kind of hear, you can sense how this collectivist mindset is really perverting and misappropriating the lesson that is to be learned from America prior to the civil rights movement. It wasn't so much that integration hurt Black folks, and so therefore we need to reverse course on that, because if you remain isolated and cut off and there is no communication, you look at every historical examples of isolated peoples, from the Highlanders in the United Kingdom to the folks in the hills here in the United States. You look at China prior to the Magi Restoration. You look at sub-Saharan Africa. Anytime peoples are isolated, it does not bode well for them. So that's not a good idea in and of itself. What happened prior to the 1960s, leading up to the 1960s, was a change in mindset. It wasn't integration that destroyed Black businesses and so on and so forth. It was a loss of morality, a loss of virtue that was brought upon by a change in mindset. Because simply Black folks simply coming together and choosing not to go to white businesses isn't going to make Black folks any more economically prosperous. Because you need virtue, you need morality in order to build. And so we can, again, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds and talking about how the whole, the philosophy behind what sort of undergirds the free market system is sort of like a prerequisite for this kind of economic flourishing that we're talking about. But I just want to make that point. A lot of people, I don't think really sort of, they don't really get it. You know what I mean? When you have a loss, particularly a loss in sexual morality, a rampant increase in violent crime, which is what a lot of what we saw in the 1960s, right? It wasn't so much that these kids who, young adults who inherited these businesses and land and property from their parents, simply just said, the heck with it, because they wanted to be around white folks. No, they had no interest in that, because to do so was tantamount by the 1960s to quote unquote selling out, to being an Uncle Tom Negro, to letting the white man get away with all of his abuse and so on and so forth. They had no interest in participating in the American dream, because that would only prove that, of course, the free market system and many other principles that undergird America actually works. And so this is the communist tactic, to not get people to buy in. You have to, of course, make them, angry and so on and so forth. And so that they, of course, become these revolutionaries. So it's a change in mindset. It wasn't simply integration on its own. As a matter of fact, I think integration probably didn't have as much to do with it as we think it did. I think Black folks lost their way even long before the 1960s. It was coming slowly but surely. It was coming from the 1940s, the 1950s or 1960s. I'm sorry. The 60s were just a culmination. But it was coming.
That's a really good point, because everything starts in the mind. This would never have happened if Black people were able to think about this differently and not be so propaganda. I mean, here's the thing though. The propaganda, the media, all of the stuff, it is powerful. Most people don't believe that they can be like brainwashed or any of those things. You think it can't ever happen to you. But if you go and you read Robert Lipton's book, it's about thought reform. I can't think of the entire title right now, but he went over to China and he was talking to those who were in the Mao's cult, and it was doctors, it was lawyers, it was people from all walks of life, upper class, lower class. Just, you would think like, oh my gosh, like how does that happen? How do you get brainwashed by this stuff? But it is the mind. That is the thing that we hear it all the time, like in church, Satan is not, he's after your mind, but it's true. It is true, because if they can get that, then that's the thing that's going to control what you believe, and what you believe, you will walk out by what you do, in your actions, in your everyday life. That's what it is. It is changing your beliefs. When God spoke to me in 2017 and told me that my skin color had become an idol in my life, it was a mind shift. It was an instant mind shift. That's what happened. My perspective was aligned with God. I was off. And I'm walking down this road believing, all of this nonsense. And then God just straightens me up. And then it's like, I can see everything clearly now. It was a mindset shift. That is entire. Let me tell y'all this story really quick. So the first article I had ever written for the Western Journal, I was talking about, critical race theory and BLM and all of that stuff. And at the time, the hands up, don't shoot, and all of that kind of stuff was not that one, but I guess it was George Floyd. George Floyd was being played on loop, his death and all of that kind of stuff. And I just doing some research on the article that I wrote, there was a clinician, a psychological clinician. She was telling the story about a client that she had. He came in, he was offered a management position from his job, but he did not think he was management material, despite him being offered a role as a manager. And so he's like, why don't I feel like a leader? I just da-da-da-da-da. He can't figure it out. And after, talking to this therapist, he remembered that when he was about 5 or 6 years old, he overheard his parents talking to his teacher and, saying like, oh, the teacher says, oh, well, little Johnny's not much of a leader. From that moment, that one sentence, him overhearing that, his whole mindset changed, and everything that he saw, he interpreted it now as him not being able to be a leader even up until his 30s. That's crazy. Like, that is just how sensitive, I guess, your mind is for bad information. The enemy doesn't have to do much. Plant a seed, and if you don't correct it, or if your parents don't correct it, that thing grows. And it's a principle. God says one waters, one plants, but God gives the increase. The opposite, we know that that's a good increase, but the opposite of that is true as well. Somebody can plant a seed, a negative seed, and then somebody can come and water that negative seed, and there's going to be a harvest of that negative seed. And so I am one of these people who truly believe that your mind it needs to be protected. God tells us that too. Guard your heart, guard your eye gate, guard your ears, guard what comes into your mind, because it can affect you. Just like it can affect you positively, it can affect you negatively also. So great point.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Jay's about to say something.
The video that you open with, when you see those people talking and you see those people airing these grievances that are centuries old and same old tired stuff, blah, 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 it almost gives you a sense of hopelessness, because that mindset, as you were just talking about, is so impenetrable. It's how do you break through that? How do you change these people's minds? And not that should be part of our mission or something like that, but it just seems like there's no hope. Like all the nations of Africa could come on TV and be like, all right, we did it. We sold the slaves to the Jews and the Arabs and the white people, and we caught the slaves that, the people that we beat in battles and stuff, or a smaller, poorer village, or, whatever. We marauded around, and we, to the victor go the spoils. So we took people as slaves and we sold them. We did it. Still nothing. They would still somehow, contort their argument to still get back on. Yeah, but white people in slavery. And what if we got what we asked for? What if, we should, this state should belong to black people. Black people should have an acre apiece, 40 acres and a mule. Okay, what if they did that? What if tomorrow white people close the door? Boom, go ahead. You need your own sanitation companies and your own schools and your own stores and your own doctors and your own vets and your own mechanics and, carpenters and all the things that a society needs to run smoothly. Would we be prepared for that? Would we have enough people with the skills to do that?
Oh,
society, do we have the numbers? Or will we be going back to the white people's door, knocking on it and be like, look, hey, you can't leave us out here with them. All right, we're not part of that. Something needs to happen. Could we even do that? Is that even possible? Are they prepared for what they're asking for? I don't think so. I would like
for Blanche to answer that question.
They would say the same thing they did with slavery. They freed us with nothing. So they're going to say that you all left us alone with nothing. That's all they would do. They would just blame white people. They would say them shutting the door was racism. Like I said, if white folks got on a spaceship and tried to leave, that was to see black folks unified. If you want to see black people unified, let white people say we leaving Earth, we going, y'all can have it, we out of here. Black folks would all unify, and they would literally hold the spaceship down and would not let the white people leave. So Jericho, forget being prepared and all of that. They wouldn't let it happen, because you can only be black being oppressed by white. Like once you get rid of racism, that's why they hold on to it so much. Like if you get rid of racism, if you get rid of all this oppression, all that nonsense, you're not black anymore. Because think about it, the people that don't think like that are called sellouts. So if all that stuff is going away, then you ain't black. So black folks are going to hold on and fight to be oppressed. And if white folks manage to escape on that spaceship and some aliens come down, they're going to let the aliens be oppressing them. It'll be a never-ending story.
That's such a childish. That's so childish. That's how a child needs and has to have somebody else take care of them and lower the bar for them and help them. Your kids, when they can't reach something, you pick them up. You pick them up so they can reach the cup in the cabinet, because they can't do it without you. That's a child. Who wants to be like a child? Do we all not spend at least 18 years under somebody else's rule? When you can go, when you can't, when you got to go to bed, what you got to do? Aren't you tired of that? Don't you want to be an independent adult to make your own decisions, good or bad?
Mm-hmm. All right. I want to piggyback. I want to go back to something Jericho said. We talked about black folks, and I guess we're still in that area of the conversation about blacks and their emotions, and how people, these demagogues, can play on their emotions. It's very interesting. If any of you have ever read Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his philosophy on the Negro, and how he creates this dichotomy between what he considers to be the Eurocentric mind, which is a more logical, a more rational mind, versus the African mind, which he says is a more a more passionate, a more creative, a more emotional mind. And Rousseau, I mean, Rousseau was right about some things, but he was wrong about a lot of things. But one of the things that he talked about was kind of giving credence to giving credence to creativity and emotion. Even Thomas Sowell, one of my favorite Thomas Sowell books is Conflict of Visions, and throughout the entirety of the book, he's painting a picture where he's describing what he refers to as the unconstrained vision versus the constrained vision. And what he says of people who believe in the unconstrained vision is, he says, they place sincerity over fidelity. So in other words, what he's saying is that it's the same thing that Blanche says when Blanche says such things as, well, when Black people speak, it is automatically assumed by most people that they're telling the truth. And the reason that, Dr. Thomas Sowell and I would consider someone like Jean-Jacques Rousseau to be of the unconstrained vision is that if someone is sincere, you automatically believe them, because that in and of itself is a way towards finding some kind of transcendent truth as well, essentially one's own creativity or one's own creative impulse. And at the base of this creative impulse was, of course, their sexual drive, or what Rousseau and others refer to as eros, right? The principle of eros. And so people with a kind of high creative IQ were essential to the flourishing of a society, because these are the people who actually create culture. And culture is a very, very vital and important component to the human experience. And Rousseau is right to some extent, but I just thought it was very interesting that Rousseau, he kind of racialized this notion of logic versus emotion. And he said that the Negro was a kind of more emotional creature. And it's just, again, in Rousseau, once again, the unconstrained vision, he is a major figure on the political left. Many people look at the progression from Rousseau to Hegel to Marx. I just wanted to make that point. And I also wanted to just recite this real quick. This is to Quisha's question when she talked about how she brought up Robert Littleton, a gentleman to whom I'm not familiar with, in the book he wrote. And you said, Quisha, that he went over, did some studies in China, and he found all of these successful people were a part of Mao. They pretty much worship Mao. They were part of his cult of personality. Here is, I just want to just read just a brief excerpt from Whittaker Chambers' congressional testimony from 1948. This is the chairman of the committee was a man by the name of Robert Stripling. And this was very telling. At some point in my life, some time ago, I actually took the time and read the entire transcript of Whittaker Chambers' congressional testimony, but I was able to find this part right here that really made an impression on me the first time I read it. So Robert Stripling says to Whittaker Chambers, "Well, I understand how a young man might join the Communist Party, but will you explain to us how a man who has made a real living in this country, a person with a large income, some of the witnesses we have had before this committee over a period of time, what in your mind would influence them to join the party here in this country?" Here's Whittaker Chambers' response to that question. He says, and this is deep, the making of a good living does not necessarily bind a man to a critical period in which he is passing through. Such people, in fact, may feel a special insecurity and anxiety. They seek a moral solution in a world of moral confusion. Marxism-Leninism offers an oversimplified explanation of the causes and a program for action. The very vigor of the project particularly appeals to the more or less sheltered middle-class intellectuals who feel that their whole context of their lives has kept them away from the world of reality. I do not know whether I make this very clear, but I am trying to get at it. They feel a very natural concern, one might almost say a Christian concern, for underprivileged people. They feel a great intellectual concern, at least for recurring economic crises, the problem of war, which in our lifetime has assumed an atrocious proportion. Mind you, he had lived through 2 world wars, and which always weigh on them. What shall I do? At that crossroads, the evil thing communism lies in waiting for a simple answer. So I always thought that was deep.
That is very deep. Because I think he's correct. You know, like people like W.E.B. Du Bois, you know, this dude, you came from a wealthy family, you went to Harvard, you know, you're in high society, but you're a full-on communist. It's always like that. But then you have Booker T. Washington, who was born a slave, actually left something here tangible. He left a legacy here. W.E.B. Du Bois, you know, rejected, he denounced his American citizenship and like what, moved to the Soviet Union or died over there or something crazy. But
He died in Ghana. He died in Ghana.
Okay.
Which again, you know, is a place where both MLK and Malcolm X would both visit Ghana. They you know, they love Ghana. It's very, very strange. That's because Ghana, and I was watching Blanchard's live he did the other day, not his most previous one, the one before that. And this stupid clown was talking about Africa and colonialism, and he actually brought up Ghana. He brought up Kwame Nkrumah and about how Nkrumah was sabotaged and ran off and so on and so forth. But Kwame Nkrumah was a Western educated intellectual. I think he even went to, he was either Brown or Pennsylvania University, where he learned Marxism and brought it back to Ghana. And of course, he turned it into an S show, and he was eventually deposed, and he had to, you know, run for his life. And the same guy brought up that Blanche was covering. He brought up a man by the name of Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba was a legitimate communist apparatchik who was actually trained in Moscow and sent into what was that, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to create, to stir up you know, a kind of Marxist revolution in that part of Africa in order to bring this newly liberated country under the sway of the Soviet Union. And he was eventually captured and assassinated. I firmly believe it was a CIA operation to remove him during the Cold War. But make no mistake about it, I can go on and on about Patrice Lumumba, but he was a Soviet stooge who was so beloved and popular amongst the Soviet, amongst communists there in the Soviet Union, that they actually built a school and named it after him. It's called the Patrice Lumumba Institute or something to that effect. And many communist agitators throughout the world in both Africa and the Middle East, many of whom are of Arab and Islamic extraction, have been trained at the Patrice Lumumba Institute in Russia. And I think last I checked, it's still in operation.
Wow.
So, like, you know, I was watching Blanche. I was getting so mad watching Blanche's live. I said, bro, I wish I was in that room with that clown, you know, talking about Africa and why Africa is still struggling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in.
No, you're good. But I mean, there is something to that, to the wealthier young person who feels like they missed out on something and now they got to go and, like, you know, they're not going to give up. They're not going to give up their seat at Harvard. They're not going to do anything meaningful, you know, for all the little Negroes that they claim to be helping, but they can they can protest. They can use their money. Somebody asked in the chat, you know, where did MLK and Rosa Parks get all their money? Blanche said the white folks, which is true. And, but that's part of their contribution. That's how they think that they're helping, you know, the poor little Negroes and the browns and the blacks.
Oh yeah, the black and brown. And just like when they talk about reparations, they say, oh, we'll get a committee together to talk about it. We're going to get a committee, to a council. California's done it, DC's done it. We're going to talk about it. We're not going to do it, but we'll pay some people to get together and talk about it. And then that's usually enough scraps to quiet them, you know, until the next, you know, upheaval. But it's so ridiculous, and it just makes us look so petulant and weak. It makes us look weak.
I just heard the plumber. I'm gonna dip out. I don't know if I'll be back, but love you guys. Y'all go ahead. Blanche, you got this.
Okay.
And super chats need to be read. So. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me read them real quick. Martian Coon Stalin's Stasia is the origin of DEI. Stalin's Kerenistasia.
I'm not sure what that is.
I don't know what that is, but he said that's the origin of DEI, same thing. Crashing.
Yeah, either way, some's getting wrecked.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Patrina John, what's up? Thank you for the super sticker. Jesus loves you. God bless the chat. Jericho, Blanchard, Quisha, thank you. Pamela Callahan, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you. CC777, revoke MLK Day. You lead the way. Is that a real thing? Revoke MLK Day.
So I signed a petition. Where's the street? I'll sign it.
Cruise missile. Thank you for the super sticker. Sean Myers, thanks for the stream. Chuck, my condolences.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Appreciate it. Willie Doc, 2 questions. A, can you discuss the propaganda behind Bloody Sunday, Edmund Pettus Bridge? B, at Chuck, what's the story behind MLK wanting to self-delete himself? Was it internal or external?
Yeah, well, the Bloody Sunday and the Pettus Bridge. Well, it's like a lot of what happened during the Civil Rights, movement. It's funny because, to go back to Joseph H. Jackson, I mean, he called out the tactic of nonviolence back in the 1930s. Because a lot of unions would do this. Someone who was one of MLK's many mentors, A. Philip Randolph, who was in fact a Marxist. You can call him an anti-Stalinist Marxist, but he was still a Marxist nonetheless. He popularizing a lot of these tactics, long before the 1950s, 1960s is the point of fact. Of course, the original March on Washington was planned in the 1940s, and it was led by A. Philip Randolph and with the help of Bayard Rustin even back then. And, they backed off, and there's a whole story as to why it didn't happen in the 1940s. And then 20 years later, they would come around and actually do it. But this is something that, MLK would do, quite often. He knew, of course, that you can protest and you can exercise your First Amendment rights and so on and so forth. But of course, there's a procedure and there's a process involved. And oftentimes, what these civil rights groups would do is that they would just flaunt the law, and they would do it, deliberately, because it didn't even talk about, civil disobedience, right? They would deliberately break the law. And they were warned on prior to Bloody Sunday, not to cross the bridge, not to, because you can't cause that kind of a logjam. It's the same with these climate activists. You can't just block a public road or what. You can't cause that kind of disturbance, of course, without, proper permission. And they were warned ahead of time that if they chose to have this demonstration, that they would be met with force and it would be put down. And they went ahead with it anyway. And, the authorities, made good on their promise. And they put the protest down violently. But this is what they wanted, the shock and awe of it, for these people to be, these little, meek folks just marching and trying to demonstrate, for their rights and so on and so forth. They wanted the images of, agents of the state, pounding on these helpless, defenseless people. Again, the very, very deceptive tactic, right? But they were warned ahead of time, right? And so the story I get to, yes, the second part of your question about the letter, I myself don't believe that it was necessarily a threat urging King to kill himself. I think prior to, and I think if memory serves me correctly, I think even Vince Everett Ellison is of the same opinion, because I think I heard him cover it recently. But prior to, and I said this last week, that there had been a war of words between MLK and J. Edgar Hoover, or MLK would say things, disparaging things about J. Edgar Hoover in public. And he said something about Hoover prior to this letter being sent to the King family or sent to MLK directly or whatever. And I can't remember what it was, but shortly thereafter, MLK did make an appearance at J. Edgar Hoover's office, and he either spoke with him directly or spoke with a representative of J. Edgar Hoover, And, you know, once MLK left, I think he did kind of backtrack and issue some sort of apology where he, you know, kind of essentially sort of praised J. Edgar Hoover. But I think that threat, if you want to call it that, to MLK was simply a kind of a subliminal request that he issues some sort of public statement retracting his disparaging remarks toward J. Edgar Hoover. I don't necessarily think that they were trying to urge him to commit suicide, because it doesn't really mesh well with the FBI and the Kennedy brothers and so on and so forth. They're kind of coddling and protecting of MLK, from warning him of Stanley Levison, warning him about Jack O'Dell, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure exactly if they were urging King to commit suicide. That's never really been proven. That's just something a lot of people like to say, but it's simply an assumption. It's never been proven.
And is there an actual letter to verify what was said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would like to read it, see the context of the letter.
Right.
Thank you, Will Doc. And Will, sorry for your loss. Teach him Chuck. Thanks for your weekly contributions and exhaustive research.
Appreciate it, man. Pops just went to sleep, never woke up, man. You know, it happens. You know, every day is a blessing, man.
Wow. Yeah, my condolences, man. I lost my dad when I was 15, so.
Yeah, I heard you talk about it before, bro. Yeah.
Robert Lamoa, where did Martin Luther and Rosa Parks and black folks get all that money to busing and marching all over the South?
Yeah, man, I think it was like
fish fries and bean pies.
Yeah, so I was in Mississippi one time, and there was a dude standing in the median in traffic, and he had on the bow tie, the suit with the bow tie, and he was selling bean pies. I was like, "Oh wait, that's real." But I think
it's real. It's real.
Oh yeah, definitely real here in Detroit for sure.
I think the money, you know, that people are asking about that was floating around with the MLKs and the Rosa Parks and all that kind of stuff. I think it was like the modern day, you know, for us, the modern BLM scam. That's nothing new. I think there were millions, maybe billions of dollars, you know, maybe back then hundreds of millions of dollars going everywhere. You know, there's more than one way to rob somebody. You don't need a gun. You know, threatening boycotts, things of that nature, or threatening to do this and that, or calling somebody a racist. You know, I think they were using the same tactics, because if they're using them today, there's nothing new under the sun. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
You can fearmonger companies or people into paying you millions of dollars. That's what they're going to do. Even if that money, whether it came from the government or came from, you know, businesses that they were trying to extort with their, we're going to do this. Because you saw that in the 80s with Jesse Jackson and Coca-Cola. You know, them threatening boycotts and stuff like that, it got them paid off. And unless they're sending checks to all the people who are out there marching with them, where'd that extortion money go? You know, Al Sharpton stays with a perm. You know what I mean? They stay having nice suits and stuff like that. So, you know, where does that money go? I think, you know, that's been happening for the longest time. You heard Booker T. Washington talk about, you know, Negroes who benefit from keeping those grievances nice and fresh, keeping those wounds open. And like I was saying before, everybody has those same wounds. Everybody has the same scars from the same thing. The world was a brutal place in the past, very brutal, up until the very recent past. And that's how things were done. That's how, you know, everything up the West Coast of America is in Spanish, because Mexico got their ass whooped and we took their stuff. That's what happens. Why is everybody? If America's so racist and it's so terrible and it's systemically oppressive and all these horrible things, and you got police out there hunting you down, like there's, you know, patrol cars hunting black people, man, why don't you go? Why don't you get out of here? Go back, you know, to the motherland, blend in, and you see the videos. Oh, come back to Nigeria. It's so nice here. Maybe you guys should get out of here. If you can't handle it in America, it's too much. Go find something else. There's 195 other countries out there. Go check them out. They never do.
There's a viral video right now of this black lady in where is she, in Pakistan? Where is she? She's in another country.
In Pakistan, of all places.
And she is, when I tell you, cutting up, like, She done got the whole country in an up. One black woman got the whole country in an uproar. She having press conferences. I'm like, who is this? And guess what? She just being black. I promise you. She is just being black. There's nothing else she doing. She's saying, I'm not black. I'm Pakistani. My husband coming to get me, and just talking, dog. I'm like,
I saw it. I saw it. That is it. They're freaking out over there because they've never seen that in real life. It's like seeing a lion on TV or a lion in your living room. Which one is going to freak you out more? They're like, what the hell is this?
When I tell you, she got a whole captivated country, man. Like they are saying, she having press conferences every day. They follow her around. I'm not lying, dude. And when I tell you, all she is doing is being black. That's
like a circus attraction, bro.
Yeah. Nothing else.
Like a circus attraction.
Hold up, and then
Step right up, come see.
Hold up, the guy is speaking, and she said, "I hope he's saying the right thing." Oh, you better be saying the right thing. Listen, because she don't understand the language, so she just said, "You better be saying the right thing." Man, it's crazy.
Wow.
Just not realizing. I wouldn't even say realizing. Not even caring about where you are, and having been overseas, I've been to 15 different countries. You have to feel a sense of, I am a guest here. You need to have on your best manners. You need to have on your company manners. When you go somewhere with your parents, do you always act like that? Hell no, you don't act like that at home. But when you go out in public, you better act like it. You better have your little handbook or your little Rosetta Stone app. Where's the bathroom? How do I get to the restaurant? Try to blend it. You're trying to make as little a footprint as you can in their country. That's just respect.
Right.
But when you get over in those Arab countries, you get over there where the punishment hasn't changed from 2,000 years ago.
Right. I ain't messing with it.
You go to one of the countries where the main footwear is sandals. They don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to deal with it. And they won't deal with it. So when they got her somewhere and they're about to do the unthinkable, don't be surprised, because you're disrespecting their country. You're disrespecting their culture. I've been to countries where it's rude and disrespectful to cross your, when you'll cross your feet. You put your foot up on your knee when you're sitting down to show the bottom of your foot to somebody.
Yeah,
it's like that over there. So for her to be over there snapping and neck rolling, that could honestly be an international incident. This could honestly lead to Trump having to do something to get that woman sent back home, so they don't Allah Akbar her on YouTube. It's ridiculous. But where's the embarrassment? Where's the shame? You know what? Real quick, I remember going to a jazz festival in the park in this place. We used to live in Seaside, California, and there's this park called Laguna Grande, and it's right by a lake. And they used to have blues in the park. You could bring your little, your food and your family, put your blanket out on the grass. I was 10 at the time, from 8 to 80. Everybody was there. It was great. And we're sitting, we got a good spot, and all we hear is, "Oh man, shit." We're like,
here they come. Oh man.
So yeah, that's not going to end well for her. And remember, what's her name? Suki Hana, when she was over in London, what did she say she was going to do? She was going to eat what?
She's going to toss their salad. You're talking about the white women were racist because they were looking at her. I said, "Are y'all crazy? She in the middle of a public square talking about she gonna toss a man's salad." The white folks are like, "Who in the what? What monkey is out of this cage over here?"
Somebody get a banana. And you're in Europe. That's literally where they make white people. It gets no whiter than Europe. And this is how you're acting. It's beyond embarrassing. And I hope that with social media and sharing videos and things of that nature, that more and more white people every day are learning that those aren't regular Black people. Those aren't us. Those aren't regular folks with this skin color. That's a subsect. That's, those are the ones, something was in their water. I don't know. Something happened to them. but that's not all of us. I hope so.
Yeah, but you know the problem is, Jericho. Go ahead.
Nah, I was gonna say, this may be a little bit more of a serious turn, but man, I heard about, because I'm thinking of people going to foreign countries acting up, especially these predominantly majority Muslim countries. You heard about that one guy. Matter of fact, he didn't even live in a majority Muslim country. He was in Sweden. His name was what's his name? His first name is Salwan. But I think he was a native of Iraq, and I think he fled the country. I think moved to Sweden and became like this hardcore anti-Islam activist. And yeah, he was just assassinated a couple of days ago, not too long ago. I mean, he may have done this on more than one occasion. He would publicly desecrate and burn Qurans.
Oh yeah,
and,
come on.
Somebody killed him.
Come on, man.
Well, I mean, Sweden,
he was trying to die. Come on, man.
Yeah, they don't even make cartoons of Muhammad anymore.
Nope.
But Sweden could be a predominantly Muslim country at this point.
Yeah,
it could be. Good. Europe was like, they were like, no, come on in. What the,
hold on. I got two more. Thank you, learning a lot. Thank you. This is Sensato. Thank you so much. And then Broski Bear, shout out to the Broke Foods who participated in the Costco boycott. Thanks for proving our point. Amazing.
And how long are they going to sustain that? How long are these boycotts?
What is it? Going? Sunday, tomorrow. They'll be done tomorrow.
Like Target cares. Like Target's gonna miss the black dollar. And for how long? Again, what, a week, 2 weeks? Come on. We always unite over something stupid.
Something dumb.
Nobody's calling an emergency board meeting because a handful of black folks don't want to shop there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. If black people boycotted rap music, the rappers wouldn't care because we don't buy nothing compared to white people. Even the music that it could be up for argument that we created it, but we definitely did it the best, and we still don't buy the majority of that. So I don't think Target is losing any sleep.
And what's so crazy, I mean, the whole theme of the show is like, as far as the civil rights movement, MLK, was it needed? It's so disheartening to hear so many conservatives who, at the same time, praise Dr. King for his colorblind vision, which made him a conservative, because I guess it stayed true to this kind of Lockean, Jeffersonian style classical liberalism of, every individual, having value and the sanctity of the life of all human beings. And so that in and of itself and by itself classifies MLK as a conservative. But if you were to read, for example, I just so happen to have it queued up here in one of my some of my notes here. In 1964, A. Philip Randolph and Baird Rustin once again put together something called the Freedom Budget Proposal, which, he was set to present this proposal to Lyndon B. Johnson. And part of it was to sort of get Lyndon B. Johnson to redirect his focus to domestic affairs, such as, economic inequality and racial injustice and so on and so forth, and to take his focus off of Southeast Asia and the Vietnam War and refocus his efforts on the issue of the Negro. And he was, threatening essentially to put more pressure on Lyndon B. Johnson. And I think that very same year, I think A. Philip Randolph was granted the, what is it called? The Presidential Medal of Freedom. Yeah. Jericho being ex-military, I know you're familiar. So, like I said, A. Philip Randolph and Baird Rustin put this proposal together. And Dr. King wasn't a co-author, but he did write the foreword for the Freedom Budget Proposal. And here's part of what King said in his foreword to the Freedom Budget Proposal. He said, quote, We shall eliminate slums for Negroes when we destroy ghettos and build new cities for all. We shall eliminate unemployment for Negroes when we demand full and fair employment for all. We shall produce an educated and skilled Negro mass when we achieve a 20th century education system for all. For all. We, again, asking the federal government to, tax more, spend more money, print more money. So again, he's essentially turning the United States into a kind of a unitary or Unitarian type of top-down political system, as opposed to being a republic of states, or a more, just completely trashing or trouncing on the very concept and notion of federalism. And he's making all these crazy demands. I mean, you got so many conservatives, again, will champion King for his colorblind vision. But this kind of rhetoric right here, it's like he gets a pass for it, because I don't think many conservatives even know that Dr. King said a lot of these things, because simply by reading it, of course, the term Negro, kind of gives the time period away, right? Because I guess it's politically incorrect to still use that term. But someone unfamiliar with MLK intimately would probably think what I just read came out of the mouth of someone like AOC or Bernie Sanders. But no, MLK said these things. And you wouldn't accept that kind of rhetoric from any Democrat or any self-professing liberal today, but some way, somehow, MLK gets a pass. But there were a lot of people, to go back to the 1960s, who were afraid that the Civil Rights Act and other subsequent legislation would create this kind of system to where we would have to have preferential treatment and quotas and so on and so forth. And he was senator at the time in 1964, Hubert Humphrey, lied before the American people when those who were opposed to the legislation made that very same argument. He denied and said that, no, this is not what we're going to try to do. The same thing when it came to, forced busing as a result of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They said, well, if you want to integrate schools, you're going to have to socially engineer the public and force kids out of their neighborhoods across town and busing them to hither and yon. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. And then, of course, 10 years later, after the racial demographics in the public school system had changed very little, then that's when they established something called the doctrine of deliberate speed. And they came up with, and they gave the kind of constitutional imprimatur of forced busing in a Supreme Court decision. I think it was Green versus Kent County. And then all of a sudden, by the mid to late 1960s, they began forced busing. This was about 10 to 15 years after the Brown v. Board of Education decision, when schools remained virtually unchanged. So everything, DEI, all of this preferential treatment, affirmative action, these are all consequences of Dr. King in the civil rights movement. So how can you be someone who calls yourself a hardcore, right, doctrinaire conservative who believes in individual liberty and small government, and we need to get the spending under control and so on and so forth, if you still hold Dr. King and the civil rights movement on this pedestal? That doesn't make any sense. You have to cut the tree out and remove it from the root. You have to pull the weed out from the root. Because what they did was they transformed statistical variance into crimes. And now we're all kind of constantly under the federal, we're under surveillance by the federal government for any even optical, if it looks racist, if it looks disparate, if you will, then all of a sudden that's evidence of racism. They've turned statistical variance into crimes.
Yeah,
that's the civil rights movement.
And you mentioned these conservatives, so they're not even delving into King as the person more than King as the legend. He's like the mascot for America. They don't even go past the "I Have a Dream" speech. If you actually listen to it, it's crazy in itself. But they probably only stop at that one part where it says "little white boys, little black girls," and like they don't even listen to the whole speech. So these conservatives are purely looking at him from a nostalgia. He's not being examined. He's not. I'm talking about at all. And to me, it's an easy thing to say where you can say, "Oh, well, look at King. He believed." No, he didn't. Like But they like to say that King agreed. No, he didn't. King was conservative. I'm like, literally, he was not conservative. Like literally, no stretch of the imagination was he conservative. But again, the quote unquote "I have a dream" is supposed to be so noble because his dream was, racial equality, but that really wasn't even his dream.
And mind you, I'm looking at this person, J Love, in the comment section, talking about how did y'all attend colleges you attended. Hey, give me a break, man. I mean, you had black colleges, black universities, Christian-based black colleges and universities going all the way back to the 19th century. I mean, for crying out loud, you look at even a charlatan like W.E.B. Du Bois went to Fisk University and was a Harvard graduate way back in the late 18, early 1900s. So, bro, what are you even talking about? You think black folks didn't work? You think they didn't have jobs? Even when black folks were slaves, they were employed, not as slaves, but they actually earned a living, many of them.
Yeah, that's another thing. My family, my mom traced our lineage all the way back to, I think, the early 1800s. And my family, whoever that was in my family tree, had gotten their freedom by 1812. That's more than 50 years, around 50 years before the Civil War.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing that a lie that they like to perpetrate, and a lie that we've bought hook, line, and sinker, not just black folks, most of Americans, they believe that slavery was one of two things. Either you were in the tobacco fields, or three things I should say. You were in the house, you were in the tobacco fields, or you were in the sugarcane fields or cotton fields. That was it. That's all we did. That's all black folks did. We went from the ship to the fields or the house. They don't realize that black folks did everything, and it wasn't what your name's Toby Kunta Toby. It wasn't that. We weren't. I saw this girl, and you see people, they're so stupid, and they say that what they would do to black women when they were pregnant, and what they would do to black babies. Shut up. Did that happen? Probably, yeah. But was that the majority of slavery? Was that the majority of slaves' experience? No. The majority of slaves were more indentured servants. You work for and earn your freedom. And while you're doing that, while you're an indentured servant, you're treated with a certain level of respect. You might not be chumming with it. You might not be having a cold glass of lemonade under the old oak tree with whoever you're working for, but it wasn't boy all day long. And we weren't just in the fields. Black folks worked in medical offices. They worked on the docks. They worked
did everything.
Ships, driving ships, blacksmiths, gunsmiths, masonry. We did everything. So we're not just these dumb little, I'm sorry, sir. Hound dogs chasing us through the swamp. But if you don't believe you come from something, then you don't have to be nothing. If all you ever were was a dump, that's what they always tell you. If you stepped off that plantation, it's over here, boys. With torches.
But Jericho, they had a map, but they couldn't read though. What was they doing?
Hey, Branch, hold up. It was the Braves. That's what black folk did.
Yeah, that's it. That's how they would get a lantern and then they'd have you crouch down and read your braves. And that's how they got to get out of there.
Like J Love, man. Like I said, everything we said is backed up. These are facts. The first, as a matter of fact, there's another little caveat, man, to take this with you so you can get out that persecution complex you carry around. The first person, this was 5 years after the death of Cecil Rhodes, the vaunted British imperialist who was one of the most wicked and evil men to ever live. You let some of these black academics tell it. And Cecil Rhodes, he was no racist. As a matter of fact, even one of his last, public statements or testaments, if you will, was he stated openly that his scholarship, the famous Rhodes Scholarship, was to be open for people of all races. Cecil Rhodes died in 1902. The first black person to be awarded a Rhodes Scholarship was a man by the name of Alan Locke in 1907. That was 5 years after the death of Cecil Rhodes. If you don't know who Alan Locke is the founder and the father of the Harlem Renaissance. So this idea, this long before King, somebody even in the comment section said for crying out loud, King himself went to college and so did his father. Joseph A. Jackson, I go back to Joseph A. Jackson. Joseph A. Jackson had about 5 or 6 degrees by the 1930s, 1940s. This man was from he was from the Delta, Mississippi, one of the poorest areas in the country at the time. Used to be one of the wealthiest, but anyway, that's a side note.
Jack
Come on,
Johnson,
man.
Jack Johnson used to walk around in a fur coat with white women.
With white women. What up, though?
Early 1900s.
Yeah, hold up. Eddie had 4 goals in his mouth. Come on, man.
Come on. How hot was it back then for racism? Where was the racial temperature in America in 1920? And this dude's walking around with 2 white women.
See?
Nothing happened to him.
And Howard University was founded 2 years after slavery ended. So y'all got to stop. Like, literally 2 years after slavery ended, they created Howard University. So y'all got to, come on.
And some of the HBCUs were founded by white people. They're named after white people.
They're white people, they started them. A lot of Northern money, a lot of Rockefeller money went down to the South to help. So this is a bunch of nonsense.
Come on.
I don't even see J Love in the comments.
He just made a comment talking about a seminary that he went to didn't allow blacks until he was the first class of blacks was a class before him.
Then why'd you go there?
Thank you. Why do y'all always go to the most?
Why'd you go there? And you know what?
Go?
They say that you'll see some black dude or black woman playing some role. You know, all we're ever portrayed as is drug dealers and pimps and gangsters and hoes. Well, who's taking the roles? Who's lining up? Who's going over their lines? No, you ain't gonna kill me. No, that's right. You ain't gonna kill. All right, cool. Yeah, I got it. And they're getting called into a room and they're shucking and jiving. Paula Deen, she got in trouble because she catered a racist slave-themed event. Who are the black people showing up in the little short tuxedo coats with holding the trays?
Yeah, getting y'all
they
money.
Were there too.
Getting y'all money.
Exactly.
So why are you mad at her? These people keep taking these roles. Maybe if there were more of us, maybe we could branch out and do other roles. But until then, and look at Tyler Perry. He got that stereotypical black character in his movies too.
Man,
right?
Let's be honest, man. Black folks ain't got the range. They ain't got the acting range to do it. They don't have the range. They can't play no scholar, no scientist. They got to play a briggity, man. Stop. Black folks ain't got
and another thing too, another point that in spite of whatever little, discrimination or blacks weren't allowed here, we know what the Ivy League did to Jews in the early 20th century, because Jews were so overly represented in the Ivy League. There's a way to go about doing certain things in spite of whatever institutions or hurdles you feel like blacks. I believe that people that on a private level, that is up for the individuals themselves, right, to kind of ingratiate themselves and to cultivate a better, more harmonious relationship amongst themselves without the participation of the state that can, of course, has a monopoly on violence, can, coerce human behavior, because I think in the long run, J-Love, you end up doing more harm than you are doing good. There's a process involved, and you have to stay committed to the process. Human beings are human. They aren't going to be these pieces on a chessboard that you could just move around. It doesn't work that way. There's a process involved. Let people organize themselves socially as they see fit. Let the people work out their own problems. The problem is not that, that black folks weren't allowed in certain areas and so on and so forth. That's irrelevant. You can't force a person to allow, and that was one of the main pushbacks against civil rights legislation in the 1960s, was many people, and these were many lawmakers, as a matter of fact, even a lot of racist, Democrat segregationists, if you want to call them that. You had certain standouts in the Republican Party, like Barry Goldwater, who said, wait a minute, this poses a ginormous threat to the First Amendment and the freedom of association. You cannot compel people to behave in this way. It doesn't matter what you think about it. Everyone has a right to decide who they want to associate with. And that's what I firmly believe. So you can't get in my mind, because it doesn't matter what you think is morally preferable. It doesn't matter what you think is morally preferable. What you have to do is the state has to allow for the concessions of some of the darker sides of human nature so as to get those negative impulses to work in the long run toward the greater good. Like our selfishness, our need to, think of ourselves first, think of our immediate family members first, and so on and so forth. We have this care for ourselves, and then it kind of works its way out in concentric circles. And that's just the way it works. Societies aren't built from the top down. They're built from below. They're built from beneath, from the bottom up. And so any king or any other activist coming in and forcing the hand of certain folks or certain individuals who don't want this type of person in the neighborhood or don't want this type of person in their business, let that be their right and let the market work it out. It's as simple as that. So everything you say is irrelevant, even if you have facts on your side in terms of what schools wouldn't allow blacks in and so on and so forth. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because you still don't go about fixing the problem through activism. You don't go about it that way. And that's why Black folk lost the plot. They lost the plot in the mid-20th century because they abandoned work, abandoned self-improvement in the form of activism and politics. They've lost the plot.
Yep. Real quick, unfortunately, I got to get going, fellas, but 3 things.
All right, bro.
To echo your point, you're right. You can't legislate perfection. You can't legislate people getting along. You have to let nature take its course. Number 2, happy Black History Month.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. Hey, Blanchard, bro, Blanchard, where the kufi, man? Where's
I'm wearing next show. I got another.
And my background, all my backgrounds for the whole month of February are going to be kente cloth. I'm going to change it tomorrow. But last point, it's early in 2025. It's only February. How long until we get another first Black whatever sport movie? The what is it? The Great Debaters, the Terrence Howard, the swim movie. What was the pilot? The World War II pilot.
Hey, listen, hey Jericho, I'm a big stand-up connoisseur. Did you ever see Bill Burr special when he did a whole bit on that movie Pride with the first Black swim team?
He's like, I gotta be honest, I don't really give a shit anymore. I don't get it. It's down to swimming.
It's swimming. Come on, get out of the pool.
Get out of the pool. And he's right. There's always that over-the-top racist white character who's supposed to represent all the racism.
Represent all white people.
But how long? How long until we have the next? Because like I said, the last one I saw.
We had that one movie come out on Netflix a couple weeks ago. Was it with the all-black female regiment in World War II, whose assignment was to organize the males?
I refuse to watch it. I know it's gonna be stupid.
That would be stupid. My mom was in the Army, and she would say that sounds stupid. There's no way in the world that ever happened. That's the World War II version of the Woman King. That's a bunch of nonsense. But how long until we get that movie this year?
Man, I'm trying to think what they're working on, man. I don't know. It's coming up.
Oh, they got one coming with Michael B. Jordan. Listen.
It's
supposed to be like a horror movie, right? It's called Sinner or something.
It's a Black horror movie, but check out. I feel like the white people are gonna be the monsters, though. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they'll make white folks the monsters.
Yeah, some Karen.
Yeah, it's gonna be something dumb, though. I just gotta feel it's gonna be stupid, man.
Bruh. The last one, I didn't watch it, but the last trailer I saw was the one where it was the World War II pilot, the Black pilot, and he had, the one white pilot who's like, hey man, what's the big deal, guys? His blood's red like ours. They were like buddy, they were like the first interracial. Come on, dog. Shut up.
I'm gonna tell you what movie got me upset was the movie when they were supposed to be working for NASA.
The black women, it was about black women, right? Hey, I didn't watch that.
Anyway, I'm going to go watch it thinking they're gonna be building spaceships and rockets. I'm like, man, they ain't doing nothing but getting the coffee. I said, what kind of movie is this? No, they didn't do nothing. No, they didn't do nothing in the movie. No, they didn't do nothing. Oh, that's
Bro,
what
like
it is. Hidden Figures. I mean, that's horrible. Man, I was like, what is this?
It's
so
so
that
bad,
movie,
man.
that movie, man, the one with they literally. And I heard it, this actually happened. They took a bunch of black women. Their job was to organize the mail, and because they had like a 3 or 4 year backlog on letters, and they had to. They wasn't on battlefields. They weren't.
That's what I'm saying, Chuck. Like, come on,
They're
dude.
separating them letters, man. They're separating letters and dealing with racism. That's tough.
Leatherface brought up Remember the Titans. I actually enjoy Remember the Titans. I thought it was good movie. I thought it was a decent movie. My favorite moment in that film was when I thought it was a very powerful message, as a matter of fact, when Denzel Washington, when Coach Yost was talking to the white coach. No, Coach Yost was the white coach, right? Denzel was Coach Boone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like, anyway, I may be getting mixed, but anyway. Remember after when Petey, Donald Faison's character, remember they had their first game and Petey had a fumbling problem and he fumbled the rock. Denzel got mad, benched him. The white coach went over to him, talked to him, held his hand, said, hey man, go back in the game. I want you to check number so-and-so because he killing us out there because Ryan Gosling was getting torched out there. Mm-hmm. So Petey stuck on him. And then from that point on, Petey became like one of the standout players on the defense. So they go the following day, they're in the locker room. And I think this was after, they threw a brick through Coach Boone's window or whatever. And so they're talking and Coach Boone says, yeah, so about Petey, about Lesserday, he said, hey, no need to thank me, coach. He said, thank you for what? It's like, for Petey, He said, I don't remember it word for word, but he said, some players may not take too kindly to your style of coaching, how you come at them. He said, which players you talking about? Which players you talking about? He kind of froze. He said, I grabbed Bertier. I don't see you. I yell at him. I don't see you taking his hand, pulling him off to the side. I yell at Sunshine. I don't see you grabbing Sunshine's hand, pulling him off to the side. Which players you talking about? He knew he was talking about the black players.
Yeah.
He said, bro, he said the world don't care about how they feel. He said, you can say I'm one mean cuss, but I'm a mean cuss with every single solitary player on my team, every single solitary player on that field. He said, when you grab the young black boy's hand and you pull them off to the side, he said, you're not strengthening, you're not helping them. He said, you're crippling them. You're crippling them for life. I thought that was a very powerful moment in that film.
Yep, that came out, what, 2000, 2001? 2000.
Yeah.
That was the last one. That was the last
one.
That
actually kind of dealt with race in a very balanced, a very nuanced way. It didn't just make white people look evil. It didn't just make,
the help.
12
years. It's always Jim Crow or slavery. That's all we ever got in these movies, man. It's so stupid.
Right.
One of the worst film I watched it today again, Queen and Slim. Y'all seen that?
When I first saw the trailer for Queen and Slim, I was like, nah, bro, I'm not watching that, bro.
my girl at the time was a liberal, and she was like, no. Like, she even rejected the film. Listen, that might be the worst black film ever. I'm serious. There's no positive.
That's saying a lot. Listen to
me. When I tell you it hits on literally every aspect of this propaganda, I'm talking about from slavery, the police, the black man ain't this, the black woman running, talking about everything, dog. It's crazy.
I can't.
Hey, hold on. Hey, Jay, before you go, I know you gotta go, bro. I gotta go, but I gotta circle back to Bill Burr for a second, because I think it was that same special where Bill Burr was talking about Dangerous Minds. Y'all remember Dangerous Minds?
Oh, yeah, went to the school. No, it was one with Hillary Swank. Hillary Swank was the teacher.
working with
Yeah,
his young
he talking about, you know, at the end, he's like got the white teacher, she's dancing, they're putting a bandana on her head, she's all cool. He's like, that's bullshit. That's not reality.
He said,
so you whites.
He's all, let me guess. When she first gets there, they don't accept her. Then she goes home, she cries to her effeminate boyfriend who's wearing sweatpants for some reason. And then he says, no, you got to stick with it. She goes back, she starts pulling out their inner beauty. Next thing you know, she puts a do-rag on her. And they have that footloose moment. Oh, there it is.
He's talking about in real life shit. That shit, sitting her ass on crying, like, oh my God, I can't do it.
He said,
kids are crazy.
He said, I want to see a real one where the first day the teacher goes, you can't help these people. This is a $300 prescription.
Right. I can't help these people. That's real.
Oh, man. And now he's a woke dummy, too.
Yeah, I'm about to say, that's when Bill Burr was funny. That's when he had
what happened to him.
He's married to a
he married a black
woman.
He married a black female liberal. That's what happened to him.
Nina.
Yeah.
Nina, I don't even know.
He married a black woman?
Yep.
Yeah.
Not just a black woman.
Oh, yeah. A woke one.
You don't understand our struggle and racism. And, oh, man.
Come on.
What's his white name? Because he would talk about it. I used to listen to Bill Burr's podcast and everything. He used to talk about it all the time.
Podcast. Yeah, Nina.
Nina,
she's like, when you marry a woman like that, remember the Matrix when the agent would stick his hand in their chest and turn the other person into an agent? That's what she did to him.
Yeah, she did, bro. She corrupted. And it's funny because I used to listen. I've listened to Bill Burr for years, and he even talked about from the time they were dating. Then it's like, you know, then all of a sudden they got married. This is the same woman, you know what I mean? He had little funny moments where he was talking about how she told him, you know, first told him about lotion, how he, as a white guy, he never put on lotion. And, you know, it was funny. He talked about they got into a fight one time. Then I noticed how it's kind of started changing. They were sitting back one day watching a documentary on the evolution of rock and roll. And they were talking about Elvis and how, you know, Elvis, the Rolling Stones, all these white rock and roll groups stole all the black artists' songs and all this stuff. And how she was all upset about it. And he was just like, I mean, what's the big deal? And they got into it about that. Yep. And then all of a sudden you saw he got more and more tamed. He got more and more tamed.
She was sitting, they were somewhere, or I think at a UFC fight. She's sitting behind Trump and she's flipping him off.
Yeah, she flipping him off, giving Trump the middle finger. Yeah. He's sitting right there
behind it. And Bill was like, he didn't even say nothing, man. If my wife did that,
grabbed her, he put your hands down.
What the hell are you doing?
Right.
Oh, he's a buster, dude. She has his testicles up on top of the fridge next to the cereal. He can't touch it.
Hey, follow this white comedian. I forgot who put me on. It might have been. I think it was Blanchard played one of his little reels or something. It put me on, so I'll start following him on Instagram. But this one white comedian, he's not super famous, but y'all probably heard of him. His name is Quindale. Quindale is free white dude. Hilarious dude. Hilarious. He don't care at all. Like he will go in black folks, Mexican. I think he says his wife is Mexican. I mean, you talk about the opposite, and he's actually funny. I'm not just saying that because, like, politically, I kind of like, you know, sensibilities are kind of riled up a little bit. But he's genuinely funny, bro. He's like what Bill Burr kind of used to be. His name is Quindale.
Oh yeah. Right? This dude's hella funny.
He's
funny, he's the one who says when black people get mad, they look like they're looking over a fence.
He was like, what's the name? Emma Dean, you want some coffee? He's like, hell yeah, I want some coffee. Now you know I want some coffee.
Yeah, he's hella funny. All right, guys, I gotta go. All right, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Catch y'all later.
For sure.
All right, we got one more super sticker and then we can close out.
All right, cool. Jack
Hammer. The black lady in Pakistan lied and told him that she was Kamala Harris.
The funny part about it is I don't know if Jack lying or if he's telling the truth because she probably
dog, if you see her though, if you watch videos, you're gonna be like, what in the world? Like she got the whole country at a standstill, dog. It's crazy.
Wow. And watch you, like you said, this mess around turn into an international incident or event that we're gonna have to be talking about, especially if something happened to her. and all of a sudden it's going to be a huge problem and diplomatic, all type of stuff back and forth because she's an American citizen. It's going to be a whole mess. I'll tell you, black folks, man,
she got that head covered though. She knows she ain't too crazy. She got the right. She got the clothes. She got the clothes. The outfit is right. She ain't walking around crazy. She knows she get her head cut off for real.
Yep.
Let me see if I can. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, man. J Love, man. Just one last thing you said about the MLK not being here to defend himself and this and that, man. Ma'am or sir, you got a lot to learn, man. You got a lot to learn. I don't know if you new here, you're not familiar with our content and what we do. We do work here. We do our homework here. And we know precisely who MLK was, what he was all about, and what he stood for. So, you know, it doesn't matter if he's here or not. I'm not saying, you know, I'm wishing him, you know, again, yeah, he's dead. And I hope God have mercy on his soul the same way I wish God has mercy on mine when it's my time. Because, of course, you know, I'm no perfect man. But, you know, the truth is the truth. And the facts are the facts. And what I just said, that's facts. So, you know, again, tell me what you know about MLK and I'll exchange some information with you and we'll see who knows more about the life and legacy of MLK. I don't think it's you.
He gonna pull up I Have a Dream coloring book, man. He's not gonna have nothing. Hold on.
What you got?
Hold up, man. Hold on.
जाए अपने खानदान के पास जाए और पाकिस्तान ये इज्जत के साथ जो है वो रुखसत हो। क्या आप लोग भी भाई यही चाहते हैं ना? बिल्कुल हर पाकिस्तानी जो है वो यही चाहता है कि ये बस अब जो भी ये मामला जितना हो गया 2-3 दिन बहुत हो गया भाई, बहुत हो गया, बस है, बस अब बस है, बस है, बस बस।
Listen, he talked too much. That's it.
Yes, that's it. Yes, I'm saying.
Listen, you talk too much.
Okay.
We don't know what you're saying.
अच्छा, आप ये सारी चीजें हम जो आप अभी देख रहे हैं, ये हम रात से मतलब है कि स्पेयर कर रहे हैं। अच्छा, जाहिर है हम तो इंसानी बुनियादों पर हमारा काम है, खिदमत का काम है, हम इनको देख रहे हैं। अच्छा, हमने इनके लिए कपड़े भी मंगा के दिए, इनको रात से जो ये खाना चाह रही हैं, फास्ट फूड जो भी जो इंटरनेशनल चेन के जो खाने हैं वो ये कह रही है हम इनको दे रहे हैं। मतलब हम सब इनको जो है प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, इनका ख्याल रख रहे हैं। लेकिन चूंकि इनकी जहनी कैफियत जो है इस तकलीफ की वजह से, इस परेशानी की वजह से बहुत ज्यादा मतलब डिस्टर्ब है, तो बस
I don't know what he said, but he sound panicked, man. Like we got to get her up out of here, man. I don't know what he said. But it sound urgent though.
कि अल्लाह ताला जो है वो खैर वाला मामला फरमाए, इनके लिए दुआएं कि अल्लाह पाक इनके लिए खैर वाला मामला फरमाए।
Man, they need to lock her butt up, man. Oh my goodness. With a bike on her shirt. She done captivated the country.
मेरी कार में 2 रिवॉल्वर्स जल्दी करो।
Are you security guard of Onitsha?
Yes, he is.
So what's your next plan?
He's gonna escort me out.
Do you see her makeup?
Terrible, no eyebrows. She terrible. Terrible.
Anyway, they got videos of her, man, and I guess she went over there to find her husband. I'm trying to meet her, I don't know, something about her finding her husband over there. She agreed to something, and I don't know if dude didn't show up but she got the whole country in an uproar. Hold on, here we go. This is the last one.
What is this?
Man, do you see this though? Like, what in the?
Oh, Pakistan, man. I guess y'all done got soft since the Indian Revolution. Since y'all was up there slaughtering Hindus, y'all done got soft.
Not that old dude. That old dude was serious. He like, we got to get her up out of here. Listen.
Oh man. Anyway, man, that's crazy. I think Jackhammer put one more super in. We can get that one. Let me get up out of here because I ain't low key, man. I need to eat.
All right. Jackhammer, have any scholarly dissertations ever expressed interest in a live discussion on any of your past topics? Oh, I'm sorry, dissenters. Have any scholarly dissenters ever expressed interest in a live discussion on any of your past topics? Have they? I don't know.
I don't know either. You know, not me personally. I know Chad had a brief back and forth with Nicole Hannah Jones, but I mean, other than that, I mean, not to my knowledge.
No, they wouldn't on this. They wouldn't do it because they wouldn't do it. All right. Well, all right, y'all. We're about to get out of here.
It was a short one tonight, man. We down two members, so we gonna call it a night.
We had good attendance though. 925 was the highest.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. All right, Chuck.
All right, bro. Holla at you next week. I'll be tuning in to whatever you do during the week. As always, y'all keep praying for me. Give me strength. Miss my old man, y'all. Give me strength.
Oh, yeah. We're going to pray for you, man.
All right, y'all.
All right.